Hello everybody, this is going to be a follow-up to my video about egalitarianism. The person I was responding to there, Kunislog, has gotten back to me, and some of the points that he brought up I think do lead to some interesting discussions about welfare, egalitarianism, taxes to the state, and all that. So I definitely wanted to upload it for everybody. Okay, so he says that, I won't read everything, but most of what he typed. You say that egalitarianism cannot be disassociated with sameness, which is one of the things that I said there. Now, I grant that most people who talk about egalitarianism don't say that it means everyone has to be identical, but when you start criticizing any difference as an advantage or a power advantage, any kind of distinction, giving some kind of inherent ability, which this is everything, that even stuff that seems mundane contributes to your abilities. So I think that the logical conclusion is that it does need to lead to some kind of everyone needs to be identical, everyone needs to be the same, because any differentiation, any differential in terms of physical qualities or quantities, or mental qualities or quantities, will lead to some form of hierarchy and segregation based on that, and that's going to lead to power imbalances. And so if you really want to, bring that as far down as possible, I think egalitarianism would have to admit that, well, not all not some inequality is okay to a certain point, but that point is kind of arbitrary. And if you're saying it's bad for one person to be, 20,000 times wealthier than somebody, then why not 1,000 times? Then why not 5 times? Why not 0.001% more? But so this is interesting what he says here, and I'm going to say that I don't know how many egalitarians would fall into this category. Probably more than him, but probably not all. But he says the equality that I believe in is forced equality of overall life satisfaction and power over others. This leaves a huge scope to different other ways. So he's not talking about, it sounds by that definition, he's not talking about necessarily wealth inequality, but equality of life satisfaction and power over others. So power over other ones, I think, does just feed right back into wealth inequality. If somebody's wealthier than you, then the argument's going to be made they have more power over you. Now, that's not literally always true, but the argument's going to be made, and it's a plausible argument. In terms of equality over overall life satisfaction, I don't know how you can measure that, people's life satisfaction, and then how you would redistribute that. How would you, and in fact, I don't know that that's a fungible commodity that you can't take life satisfaction from somebody who has more of it and give it to somebody who has less of it. You can, I suppose you can destroy it. It's like, so if somebody has a lot of life satisfaction because they have a family and they have a house, you could kill their family and destroy their home, and then their life satisfaction would go down. You probably wouldn't have given life satisfaction to anybody else except for the person who enjoyed doing that. And to be fair, there's lots of leftists who do enjoy doing that. There's lots of leftists over history who have seen people as their class enemies, and they got some degree of satisfaction out of liquefying them, however violently. So that I don't think that this is a fungible thing that you can take from one person and give to another person. Even if you, and you could slice it, well, we don't want to take it away from anyone who's got it. We want to give it to people who don't have it. I don't know what you need the other people for. I don't even know how you give this to somebody. All right? This is one of those things like critical thinking, that there's no institutional way to help other people get. This is something that really needs to fall into the autonomy of the individual, and that they need to explore on themselves. And to the extent that they are passive about that, to the extent that they don't explore their own potential and their own desires and their own autonomy, they're never going to find things like critical thinking. They're never going to find things like life satisfaction. Or if you think that I'm wrong, I mean, I'd be happy to hear how you would go about making people equal in terms of life satisfaction. The other thing is power. This is also just false. Like, people physically are going to differ, and that's a huge difference, right? A man, on average, is going to have more physical power than a woman. And there's a bell curve, and there's some overlap here. There are some badass women who can beat up a lot of men, or even most men, but they're very few and far between. And so that's always going to be there. And then you have people who are going to be smarter, who are better able to accumulate resources, and in the course of doing that, they're going to become more powerful, and you can chop them down, you can confiscate everything that they've made, and then they'll just start the process again. So again, that's not really something that you can take from somebody and give to somebody else. If somebody is charismatic and high functioning and physically imposing, I mean, I guess you can break their legs and all that. That's not going to make somebody else more powerful. So again, it can't really be transferred. It may be something that you can destroy, but you can't really give it to somebody else. I don't know. I don't know how you can give somebody else power. Just to say that they can vote, that doesn't really give them power. So this sounds. I'm not gonna say it doesn't sound bad. The idea that like no one has power over anybody else. That's a wonderful thing, because then you couldn't. It sounds wonderful anyway. I mean, because you couldn't have violence then, you couldn't have war. So I'd agree with that. I just don't see how that is ever even remotely possible, like even theoretically. So he gives an example of Bart Simpson's. So in the second paragraph, he goes, "You say that states tend to concentrate wealth. I see that they tend to redistribute from the rich to the poor. If there is a redistribution the other way, I'm happy to see evidence of it and change my views." Okay, I don't know. So you can arrive at that intuition, and it's understandable in the sense that that's the rhetoric of the state. So the state says, hey, we have progressive taxation and we have all these welfare programs, and it's very common in any kind of society that implements progressive taxation for their politicians to really talk about that and use terms like fair share and whatever. And so, rhetorically, they're definitely virtue signaling that. And you can also look at what the state does, and if you're selective in what you see, you can convince yourself, hey, they're cutting checks to poor people, and we know that rich people pay more in income taxes anyway. So isn't that what's going on? But the problem is that states are very large institutions that do a lot of things, and you can't just look at this one little aspect and be like, oh, see. So we could pretend that that states only made roads, right? Because they do a lot of road building, and we can just look at it and be like, see that they just exist to build roads, and you would just be missing 98% or 99% of what they do. We could use a more clear example. So like go to Pharaonic Egypt. We have the king of Egypt, the pharaoh of Egypt, is expropriating a large all the surplus from his subsistence farmers. He's taking whatever, half, 75% of what they grow. He's leaving nominally just enough for them to have enough calories to not starve. And given the year, that may or may not be true. He's taking that and he's using it to give himself fabulous palaces, temples dedicated to his greatness, giant tomb. I mean, the most famous thing are these tombs. This is just ridiculous. A tomb that took 20 or 30 years of the accumulated excess labor of an entire society just so that he would have a tomb, right? He pays for his military. He does all this stuff, and you wouldn't look at that and say, well, the state is redistributing to the poor. But you could also say there were times, like during famines or whatever, where they would dispense grain. Now, granted, everyone grew the grain. Like you're a farmer and you give up, whatever, 3 tons of grain, and then in a famine, maybe the pharaoh will give you a bowl a day for 3 months or whatever, 10% of it back, or beer. At the time, beer wasn't like a recreational thing. It was a good way to get clean calories. But you could just look at the fact that he's paying back some of this stuff that he taxed from you and say, oh, look, the states redistribute. That's their primary thing. Well, yeah, if you only look at that one thing, you have to look on net. Okay, and so most government spending doesn't go for welfare, and even welfare spending, it's not like they're taking $1 billion from Michael Bloomberg and giving $1 billion in checks to poor people. They're paying for the administration. They're paying for staff who are usually upper middle class, and I think that we could go into all the things. So much of the spending is defense spending, which is then going into the military-industrial complex. They're giving massive contracts to Lockheed and Northrop Grumman and Raytheon and Honeywell, and they're getting billions and billions and even trillions in some cases, Boeing, and that's mostly going to shareholders and wealthy people. And most of their funding is not going to redistribute. But I think the kind of the clinch test here is, in the case of the United States government, they're taxing a little over $1 trillion a year. They're spending more than that because of inflation. And that's significant. If we look at the aggregate wealth of all of our billionaires, $1 trillion is a lot, and the inflation on top of that's even more. And every year, they exist and they're spending a lot of money. Now, if what you were saying was true, if you say they tend to redistribute it from the rich to the poor. If that's true, then what they should be doing is we should see a situation where the rich are getting sucked dry, like so much is taking, trillions are being taken from them and redistributed to the poor, that the rich should be shrinking, they should be losing wealth on net, and the poor should be rising up. And we don't see that. What do we hear all the time? That the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Now that's a bromide that people say all the time, but it's actually true here. And this is despite a massive state that redistributes wealth. It has massive welfare programs. It has all kinds of Medicaid, Medicare, all this healthcare that they get. Like, there's many programs that you could say, well, this is a welfare for poor people, public schools, whatever. And the thing is, the fact is that even $1 trillion a year and more every year, year in, year out, the rich are doing better and better, and the poor are not doing that much better. And there's also questions of, even if they are doing a little bit better, is it because of the welfare or not because they got a better smartphone, they have a better car, which are things that are not coming from the state anyway. And this is not just true in the United States. This is true in the UK. This is true in the Scandinavian socialist countries. They all have these big states that you want to say are redistributive primarily. That's mostly what they do. And yet you still have poor people in those societies that don't go away, that don't rise up. And you have still have super rich people in those countries who don't disappear. So it's obviously on net, however that spending's getting spent, they're not taking enough to stop the rich from growing richer. And when they redistribute, a lot of it's going right back to the rich. A lot of the inflation that they use to fund the shortfall between what they tax and what they spend, that ends up in the stock market. This is very well established. So it helps the Warren Buffetts of the world in a way that it's never going to help the poor people of the world. And so it sounds nice, and you can easily, the states today are so big that it's very easy to single out, like, well, look at this program, sure, but you're accounting for a tiny percent here, a tiny percent there, a tiny percent there. On net, they're spending trillions, literally, or $1 trillion anyway. Well, recently, literally trillions in the course of a couple days. And on the one, in the case of the United States, they did 2 or 3 or 4 trillion, I'm getting different numbers, directly to businesses, to Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, right? Wealthy, powerful, capitalist corporations. And then they did cut, they're going to give everyone in the U.S. $1,000 for 2 months. And you could look at that and be like, see, well, that's small beans at the end of the day. That's the loaf of bread that Pharaoh gives you after he took you everything that you grew for the year. So again, if your intuition was correct and it was based on something other than an intuition and a selective viewing of the situation, you would have to conclude that they're obviously not. The wealthy are still there. They're getting more wealthy. Wealthy people call for progressive taxation. Wealthy people fund the state. Wealthy people don't act like slaves who are under an onerous state master who's exploiting them. They are partners with the state. That's the way they look at it. They fund it that way. They talk that way. They treat the state as their partner, not as their class enemy. And that's another thing that you should be very keyed in. Look, and you can see this by so many, all the champagne socialists in your own country, in the UK. Almost everyone who's a socialist is rich, at the political level. They went to Oxford, they went to Cambridge, their family's wealthy, they're in shipping, they're in whatever, they're in real estate, and then they come out there and they talk about socialism and the NHS and all that, and the plebs eat it up. So I think that if this really made sense, that we should see the rich just lose their wealth year after year after year until there's very little left or none left, and the poor we should see this equalization in wealth or in income, and we don't see either, even when we have welfare states in Scandinavia or in Germany. It didn't happen in the Soviet Union. It's certainly not happening in the United States. So I think that you say that, and I'm sure you honestly believe that, but I'm going to say that the evidence is that that's clearly false. And again, you can look at, they can have rhetoric, that's one thing, but the effect is more important. So let me continue. So I agree with your hypothetical that a particular millionaire isn't harmed by the existence of a particular billionaire, and not just a particular millionaire, anyone, right? I'm sure there's lots of billionaires and they're not hurting me. So due to thought experiments like this, I don't regard equality as a moral end in itself. The reason I'm a radical egalitarian is that I think, and I confess I don't have any scientific evidence for this, that equality causes humanity to make worse decisions. That inequality causes humanity to make worse decisions. It turns us into competitors of one another, leading to unnecessary, polluted, and unpleasant world we live in. I just don't. Again, you have no evidence that being competitive makes us make bad decisions. If we had 100% state ownership of everything and there was no private property, we would still need to produce things, and so there would still be like we would still need factories. We would need some means to convert natural resources into goods. Otherwise, we would all just live naked in the wilderness. So, unless you're calling for some kind of radical primitivism, we need industry. We need that, and that's going to produce pollution to some degree. There is no evidence that if you don't have competition, or if you have private ownership, or if you make everything equal, that there won't be any pollution. That's I don't know if that's just an intuition you have, but like we have examples of countries that have state ownership of the means of production, like in the Soviet Union, and they had horrible pollution. Just look at the Aral Sea, or well, you could look at the Aral Sea if it was still there, but it's not. It's gone. It just as one. So like the fourth largest lake in the world was destroyed in about 20 years by the Soviet Union, with state-run everything. There was no private industry. That wasn't capitalism. That was state-run, day one to the end. And that's just a dramatic example, but not the only one. So, it's hard to say how competition makes people make bad decisions. Competition makes people come up with more and better decisions. The fact that if we don't have competition, that again means sameness. That means that we have one thing for everybody, right? If we don't, because if we have different ideas, those different ideas are not going to all bear the same fruit, and we're going to have differential, and that is kind of be competition. So the only way to get rid of competition would be to eliminate all free thought, all alternative ideas, and have one policy, one thing that everybody does. And there is no evidence that, let's say, having that as a goal will yield the best policy. It's quite likely that having competition, having multiple different policies, we arrive at progressively better ones. There's a lot of geopolitical theorists out there who believe that the reason that Europe kind of took over the world in terms of influence was because Europe is all these peninsulas and islands and bays and mountain ranges and radially flowing rivers, and it's really partitioned by geography in such a way that you don't get European hegemons. We haven't had any states that ruled all of Europe, whereas if you look at China, it lends itself much more easily, practically speaking, to rule by a central state, and it's had that much more throughout its history, not completely, but much more. So you've had many, many Chinese states that were larger than all of Europe, and yet that kind of calcified their ideas because you have the one imperial policy. That's not to say that everyone in China had the same thoughts, because you had some competition going on there as well, but not nearly as much as you would get in, you just look at a map and look at Greece and how it's all peninsulas and islands. There's literally thousands of islands, and then Italy's a peninsula with smaller peninsulas and other big islands like Sicily and Sardinia and Corsica, and the same thing with Spain, and then you have these mountain ranges. So developing strict political control over that entire area has just not really ever happened. It's come close a few times, it's never actually happened. And competing ideas, just in terms of politics, is a good idea, but just in terms of everything else is also a good idea. You want to have 1,000 different firms trying to build a better car. You don't want to have one firm and say, this one firm is gonna have the best. What's the basis for assuming that one firm will have better ideas than 1,000 firms competing with each other? Like, I don't even think that that makes sense in terms of intuition. If that is your intuition, you need to back that up with something, because that doesn't make a lot of sense. There's just fewer people making decisions. And if you want to say, well, we'll have multiple firms, but they all have the same ideas, again, that doesn't, or there's not going to be, there can't be any competition between them, then that does mean they have to have the same ideas, because as soon as they have different ideas, that's competition right there. So let's see. So this is the juicy part. So this is the emotional part, but I think this is the part that really kind of gets to it. So lastly, you say that leftists are motivated by envy. It sounds like I'm a more jealous person than you, the way you talk about better off people. I hope this isn't the motivation for my egalitarianism, though. And the arguments just given are my true reasons. It's impossible to unpick one's own biases, I guess. I'm a poor and unsuccessful individual. Wow, make it real here, buddy. I'm a poor and unsuccessful individual, so maybe that shapes my political outlook. Not all leftists, e.g. Soros and Sanders, are likely to be jealous. So it's not all of us. Also, bad motivation doesn't invalidate our purpose, our proposals. Many right-wingers are motivated by greed, and that doesn't invalidate their views. Thanks again for your video. So blah, 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 and give some personal stuff there. So first of all, this is interesting because you just cited, to a millionaire and a billionaire, Sanders and Soros. This is interesting, and I pointed this out years ago. I made a video, one person equals one vote equals bullshit. You just pointed out people who are wealthy and successful and are clearly not equal to you. They're not equal in terms of their demeanor. Like you even said that you're jealous and you don't think that they're jealous. I don't know. They may or may not be jealous. I don't know. But they're clearly like way more successful than you are. And here you are deferring to them, and they're your leaders. And that's the thing. Leftists have leaders that they defer to. And I use this example all the time as someone like Noam Chomsky. He's not wealthy, but he's smart and he's written a lot of books. And just tons and tons of leftists will just, oh, okay, whatever you say. And here's the other thing. I'm going to set my computer down because I'm done reading the comments. You talk about people want equality of power. No, they don't. No, they don't. I'm sorry, but they don't. And I'm speaking as a gay man who encounters this all the time. Do you know how many people are begging to be dominated out there? Every day, all the time. Do you know how many people see having autonomy and having freedom as a burden that they hate, that it causes them unending stress all the time? And it's not just gay dudes. And that's what they want. They want to be slaves. I have people who tell me they want to be slaves every day, that they've wanted it since they were little kids. That's all they think about. And it's not just gay kink. When I worked in fast food, there were always people, and actually a fair number of the people who worked there, who they had all this, they'd worked there a long time. They knew everything. They knew how to operate all the machinery. They knew every position. They knew the score. They knew how to work in that environment in a comfortable way and in a productive way. They didn't want to be managers. Even though managers was more money, and manager is a better way to get a higher level job, and that's basically how you can promote through it. And they didn't want it. They didn't want it because they didn't want to be in charge. They didn't want to have the stress of having to manage things. They didn't want to have to deal with having a little bit more responsibility, even if it came with a little bit more pay. And I'm not faulting these people. I'm not saying, fuck, if you're a real man or a real woman, you should be motivated to become a manager and climb the ladder as high as you can. Many people don't want that. They're happy to have way less, and other people are more ambitious. So your fundamental premise here that everyone's equal in this regard is completely wrong. We're not equal in how much we want power. We're not equal in how much we react to power. We're not equal in how much ambition we have, what ambitions we have. So there's plenty. We talk about self-actualization. There are people who are very poor who are very self-actualized, right? They're very happy. Maybe they have a family. Maybe they raise dogs. Maybe they have a cabin in the woods, or some cheap apartment. But whatever it is that they do, whatever hobbies they have, or whatever work that they do, they find it fulfilling and they're happy. And then you have other people who might be, in material terms, very much better off. Maybe they're millionaires or billionaires, and they're unsatisfied and they're upset and they have lousy family lives. So it's very complicated here. And the thing is, the stuff you're trying to traffic in, when you traffic in power and life fulfillment, these are not things that people tax. The government doesn't tax power. It doesn't tax life fulfillment. It can't transfer those things to anybody. They're not fungible at all. And the best way to find them is with personal autonomy and having personal responsibility. When somebody lays out a path for you and says, okay, you are going to go to school and you're going to take these classes, and then you're going to go to this college, and then you're going to get this degree, and then and then here's a job that's guaranteed, that you haven't discovered anything about yourself. And this is a big problem with like these welfare programs that are designed to give people like jobs and stuff. They don't, if they're not into it, they're not into it. There's always some small subset of the people who use that to their advantage and they move ahead, but those people have the motivation and the wherewithal that they would have taken any opportunity to get ahead, so-called. You know, you say that you're unsuccessful. I don't know how you're measuring that, so I'm not saying that as an insult. You put it in your thing. Let's say that tomorrow, and well, so I have a friend in the UK, a good friend of mine, longtime subscriber and someone I've met in the past, and he's got a family, and a big family, and he's a capitalist. Now, he's not super rich or anything. He's not rolling in big dough. He has to work every day. He owns a business, and it's stressful, and you know, he's always trying to work another angle, and he's dealing with the state, which is totally oppressive against him doing his job, and everything it does is ridiculous, whatever. But you know what? He's happy. He's happy and he's successful. And I mean, fuck you or anyone else who wants to take what he has. I mean, because he's worked it, the sweat. I mean, like he's done it. And anyone who wants to take what he's made, I mean, fuck them. But let's just say that did happen, and let's say the state just came and took what he had, his material well-being, his house, his business, all of his capital goods, all of his savings, and they gave them to you. You would still be a loser. I'm not saying that to be mean, but you would still be a loser. You didn't earn that, and you know you didn't earn that. It was just given to you. It was taken. Somebody else worked their ass off to make that, and they're the one who gets the credit. They're the one who has the satisfaction. They're the ones who mentally knows that they worked hard, that they saved, that they were smart, that they, you know, and that they just gave it to you. And so you're still going to feel like a loser. You're still going to feel like you didn't accomplish anything, because you didn't accomplish anything. Getting welfare that's redistributed is not going to, now, of course, this isn't even, it doesn't work that way. They would confiscate his stuff and give it to themselves, and they might set up a program where they pay a whole bunch of high-priced bureaucrats, and then you might get, you know, 5% or whatever of what they took from him. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why your belief that they primarily redistribute from the poor from the rich to the poor is wrong. Also, the rich pay all kinds of taxes. Even if you don't pay income taxes, you're paying property taxes, you're paying sales taxes, you're paying VAT taxes. Everything that you buy costs more because there's taxes on it. So it doesn't always have a price tag on the thing saying this is the tax, but that is often what it is. But you don't have any meaning because you got a welfare check. This is the big problem with the UBI and a lot of this stuff. You don't have any success. You haven't self-actualized. You don't become self-actualized because you get his money. And you know what else is going to happen? You get his money, and then you didn't earn it, so you're not going to be able to keep it. And you know what? He did it once, he'll do it again. And we're going to be, so even if they took everything from him and gave it to you so that you had more than he did, in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10, he's going to be back with more than he had before, because he will be smarter. He's smarter now. He's learned, right? He's gone through the discipline and the process that the next time he builds, I don't want to say a fortune because he's not like that rich, but like the next time he builds, you know, capital and accumulates resources, he's going to do it faster than the first time, and he's going to leave you behind again. And then what? They're going to confiscate it. And I'm using this as a metaphor, but it's very true. You're not going to be made happy by this. It doesn't make you self-actualized. It doesn't increase your power. at all. Right? There's nothing empowering about receiving welfare. That doesn't give you power. I don't know why people think that's the case. It's not. The people who are producing are the ones who have the power. All right, and they have the confidence to know what they're doing and to know what they want and to go for it and work for it. And this is, if you read somebody like Frederick Douglass, which I recommended everyone read his autobiography, he talks about this because this is a guy who was a slave. All right, he escaped slavery, and he was talking about people who were slaves or who were ex-slaves, and he said, we really are. This society really does owe us something, for all of this. And he was probably right, and they probably should have been given land because they were robbed from their slave masters, and their slave masters should have given up their plantations. But unfortunately, the Civil War wasn't about freeing slaves or helping black people. It was about stopping secession first and foremost. And once secession was stopped, they weren't going to go in and overturn the white supremacists of the South. No. But there's a part, though, where he talks about how ultimately they shouldn't go on welfare. What black people need is they need to earn it themselves. Even if you're entitled, even if you literally are owed something, it's better for you to make it on your own, to have that self-confidence, to have that, because then no one can take it away from you and be like, you know what, you only have what you have because it was given to you. This is the same, the way you would look at a child of wealth, a child who never had to work, and they're wealthy, and you would look at them and be like, you didn't earn that, you just got that. Well, guess what? That's what it is when you get it in welfare. And again, all the state can deal with is material goods. The stuff that you're talking about, power and self-actualization, it can't give you that. They can't tax my friend's self-actualization and give it to you. You need to find that yourself. And what's so sad about this whole situation is that the attitude that you're taking of passively just demanding that you be given things, and that this government solve your problems and that the government redistribute, that actually robs you of actually self-actualizing. And this is probably why our attitudes are so different about this, because whatever my flaws, and I have all kinds of flaws and I have all kinds of personal issues, but ultimately I know that, like, some billionaires, it's not their fault. Not only is it not their fault, but they can't fix me, right? They can't fix me, and they can't fix you. And if you're, and the state certainly can't by taking from them and giving to me, even if that's what they did. And again, that's not really what they do, but even if it was, it wouldn't solve our problems here. You would still not be self-actualizing. You would still be a failure, and you would still be bitter and sad. And the person that they are, the workers, the successful people who are creating the wealth that they're expropriating, they would still be mensches. They would still be out there. They wouldn't be equal to you in terms of their self-actualization or in terms of their power. So this is really, really disempowering. The whole welfare system is very, very disempowering. Again, we've seen this in the United States, where welfare programs have targeted black people, and black people's, the amount that they work, the amount that they participate in the economy has gone down. That hasn't helped them. It hasn't elevated them. And whoever else it aims for, whatever other cultures get into it, or whatever people get into it, people will talk about, well, hey, you pay a lot of taxes, shouldn't you get welfare? And I'm not going to criticize if that's how you look at it, but it's very dangerous to put your success and your happiness and your material well-being into the hands of the state, because yeah, it can give you some goods, and like definitely does, and like rich people use it all the time for that purpose. They're the number one recipients of welfare, to be honest. But if you don't make it on your own, then you have nothing but their handouts. You're just a welfare queen, and that's not empowering. That doesn't make you feel good. Shouldn't make you feel good. People are going to hold that against you forever, and you're going to hold it against yourself too. I mean, there are people out there who are just the most unself-aware leeches, that they can be happy just drawing a check and not thinking about anything else. Those people do exist. Those people are normally retarded. Okay, like if you have a brain, if you have the ability to think, then you're gonna have serious problems with that. It's gonna make you upset. It should. Okay, it's not going to make you equal to the capitalist or to the rich person or the successful person. And so no, I I don't believe in it. And look, we're not all equal, so you don't have to, and that's the beauty though. You don't have to have the same success as somebody else to be successful. Success is almost kind of like a binary thing in that way. So it's not like if you were to work hard and make $1 million, you've done very well, and you will probably be happy with yourself, and you should be. And the fact that there's another person who made $1 billion shouldn't make you feel like shit. And it won't. Now, it does make people feel like shit who haven't done anything, right? The people who have not done anything are going to feel that way. And there's lots of people out there who are not wealthy, but they've worked hard and they've earned what they have and they made their own. And they're satisfied and they're not out there demanding more because they've actually gone out and done something. They have something that's theirs that they built. I'm not super wealthy, but I've earned what I've made, you know? I had to work hard. I spent night after night. I used to work nights all night, 12-hour shifts, freezing my ass off, like coping with problems that I'd never foreseen, that I certainly didn't learn about in school, learning skills, learning abilities, all kinds of stuff, social skills, I mean, fuck, I've been burned, I've been covered in mud, I've been covered in oil, and it hasn't been perfect, but like, when I get paid that money, I earn that fucking money. That's mine. And when it's allowed me to pay for luxuries, when it's allowed me to pay for, a gun safe or a vacation to Europe or whatever, I felt good about it. I felt like I earned that, and I did. And whatever else that I have, then that's how I feel. And it's not a ton, but it's enough to be like, yeah, you know what? This is mine. I don't need to look at a billionaire and be like feel envy or greed towards them. That's just so toxic, and so petty, and it's really pathetic. And again, I'm not trying to be mean here. Like, you're admitting a lot of this in your message. That's pathetic. That attitude will never let you rise above anything. It just makes you a completely worthless passive person who just thinks that they're entitled and that the state will fix it for them. And that's, if I've learned anything from my study of history, and all history books, okay, if I've learned anything, it is that it is utterly naive to think that the state is going to help you and that it's going to make you a better person and it's going to make you happy. It's never going to do that. It has its own, it's not even Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Bernie Sanders, Ed Miliband, Jeremy Corbyn. These people are not thinking about you. They have their own things. They might believe in an ideology, right? Jeremy Corbyn is a Marxist or whatever, and whatever variant of Marxism he believes in, and he's maybe believes in that, but he's not thinking about you every day. He doesn't even know who you are, and he's going to implement his philosophy, and that's what's going to make him feel happy. He's never going to do it now, apparently, but that's his motivation. And whether or not that philosophy makes you feel good or not is not something he cares about. Like, no, I'm sure he believes his philosophy will help you, but it's that's real. And it's the same thing with somebody like Bernie Sanders. Of course, Bernie Sanders is like a shyster. I mean, he wants money. He's a millionaire. He's got 3 houses, working on the 4th. Like, the guy is a feckless fucking carpet begging piece of shit, to be honest. I think he kind of probably does believe a lot of his ideology, but again, he doesn't care about you. He treats his employees like shit. It's all these other leftists too. Schenck Uger, they try and unionize, and he's like, no, you can't unionize. Like, what the fuck? You're a hypocrite to everything. Yeah, because that's what they're motivated by, and you're putting your hope into these people. Tony Blair, you think Tony Blair or Gordon Brown, never mind Boris Johnson or Queen Elizabeth. They don't care. They don't know who you are. They don't care about you. And even if they did, let's just assume that Jeremy Corbyn really did. He was your boy. He had your best interests at heart. If someone has your best interests at heart and they go, hey, listen, this is what you need. You need to just get a welfare check. No, you don't. That's not going to make you happy. Okay? You need to, When I help my friends, when people ask me for advice, which is not always a smart thing to do, and there's a lot of things I can't tell people and I don't know or whatever, but sometimes it takes tough love and telling someone, fucking get off your ass. Like when people come up and they're fat and they're out of shape, you got to tell them, hey, I'm sorry, you need to go on a diet, you know? Not, oh, here, I'm going to send you Weight Watchers meals as welfare. That's not going to help. You got to tell them that they're fat, and you got to tell them to join a gym, or if they can't join a gym, do a substitute, which you can do. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. They're just going to get they're just going to get the Weight Watchers instant meals that you're selling them, and they're going to eat them on top of everything else and be worse off in a year. So anyway, there are material reasons I think that free market capitalism is better. Or like I think in a free market capitalist system, everybody will have more, and it will be of a higher quality, and it will be cheaper, like from the poorest person to the richest person. And that's very true, and that's reason enough, all right? But in a non-material sense, I also think it's vastly superior, right? Because you have personal autonomy, you have responsibility, you have to have both. You have to have responsibility for your actions as well. That's the other side of the coin. You need them in exactly equal proportions. And if you don't have those things, you have no meaning and you have no purpose, right? And, some people, their purpose is to be the leader. Some people want to be the center of attention, and they want to have, the president or the CEO or the team leader or whatever it is. And other people don't. Other people are actually betas or omegas in some cases. Some people don't feel comfortable in that role. They want to have a role where they have less power, where they are subordinate, whether we're talking in bed or out on the street in the office. Those people exist too. And the problem with the egalitarianism idea is that it doesn't accommodate that, or it assumes that everyone should have the same amount of power, and again, the self-actualization stuff. You need to find that on your own. You have to make that on your own. And if you're going to sit there waiting for the government to give it to you, you're never going to get it, and you're going to have a horrible, miserable life, So anyway, thank you all for watching. Any more feedback on how this looked? I turned the camera sideways like people said, and hopefully that looks a little bit different. I like that. Ooh. Someone called me a boomer because I didn't know listen, I had a smartphone for 6 years, and it said that it could do this, and it never could. So in my mind, smartphones were incapable of doing this. And then I discovered, like 2 days ago, that they work. So anyway, I hope everyone's doing well during this pandemic. Take advantage of the time. Use it if you're stuck at home. Read, learn something, do something. Like, don't just veg out all day. There's things you can do to make yourself better, that make yourself more interesting. So go ahead and do that, and have a good day.